Well, welcome everybody to another exciting cyber chat from the National Cryptologic Museum Foundation. We're really happy you're able to join us here today. We do have to apologize for Barbara McNamara, who was supposed to be our guest today. She was unfortunately called away for another event. So she will be getting back on our calendar in the near future. But the person who was going to interview her was another very prominent senior at the National Security Agency, Miss Laura Nelson. And so we are extremely proud to be able to have Laura present this wonderful topic to you. She spent many years at the National Security Agency, and I'm sure she'll get into that. But our topic is about information security and protecting our national security. But since it's Women's History Month, Laura will also talk about her journey as a woman within the National Security Agency and some of the things that she did to help other people. So with that, Laura, I welcome you to the hot seat today.
Why, thank you, Mark. Happy to be the stand-in today.
Great. Well, I'd like to kind of kick us off here with a question that is the founding question, I think, of this session, and that is your thoughts on how important information security is to protect our national security.
Absolutely critical. I think a lot of times people think about, information security as applied to our defense industry or, protecting our critical networks and things like that. But it goes way, way beyond that. So for us, it's an economic, right? It's our economic well-being. We have to be able to protect not just our critical infrastructure, not just our defense networks, but also, everything that has to do with our financial systems, things that have to do with our education systems. It is absolutely vital that we, do that and have a workforce that understands that and that is inherent in everything that they do. I mean, you may be doing something completely different, but you have to be thinking about the security of your networks and how you protect information in everything that you do.
Oh, excellent. And I'm sure we have plenty of people to do that, right?
Well, there are plenty of people doing it, but we need more. So it's always easy to say, well, we have thousands of people working in the field. No, we need so many more. Over 500,000 jobs in this area that are vacant today, just because we don't have qualified people. So, and that's just going to be growing as far as the number of jobs, because I think it's an expanding field. Just so many opportunities for students, and then even people who are in mid-career who want to make a change. I think there's opportunities to do that. Mark is having some experience with some of those right now and some interns who are working with us. So no, there's never enough, and we need to grow this workforce.
Thanks a lot, Laura. And for those who are attending the webinar, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. And I have my cohort in crime, Christine, is monitoring the Q&A, and we'll make sure that your questions get in front of Laura. So Laura, if you could maybe tell the folks how you started your career at NSA and what was it about NSA that really appealed to you?
So I'm one of many people who are at NSA who started because it was the family business. And when I say the family business, we often find that kids of people who work for NSA go into the same business, whether as an NSA employee or as a contractor or in something related. And in my case, my father worked there. He was a civil engineer, had worked for the Corps of Engineers for a while, and then moved over to working for NSA, doing installations and logistics work. So not anywhere near the intelligence or information security mission, but still doing a vital mission. Mm-hmm. And through that, we had grown up. I grew up as a kid. We lived in Germany for 3 years and then had an association with so many other families because those were our friends. Our family friends were all people who were NSA affiliates, and we maintained those relationships through the years. As I went through high school and started trying to determine what I was going to be as I advanced through college, and that I decided to pursue engineering. And at that time, I was still a little unsure if I really wanted to be an engineer because, what does an engineer really do? And, my father at the time and some of our, like my physics teacher at the time said, well, you should try it. You go ahead and enter the field, but you really want to think about a cooperative education program and finding a school that offers cooperative education, and at the same time, you have to find a place to work. Mm-hmm. Well, as it turns out, I didn't have a car, so I had to find a place to work where I could get a ride, right? So turns out NSA had a fabulous co-op program, and they still have a great cooperative education program today. And for those of you who don't know what that means, a co-op program is one where, in this case, I went to school full-time my freshman year in the engineering field. And then for the next 3 years, basically my sophomore and junior year, split the year, those 2 years into 3 years, and alternated semesters of work with semesters of school. So you got out of sequence a bit, but the schools were adapted. They knew how to adapt to that because they had so many cooperative education students. So basically I entered NSA at the age of 19 as a co-op student. And, you walk into this big, scary place. It's really not that scary, but, at the time I felt it was like a scary place. And you go in and they give you a job, right? And you have a project you have to work. And, I knew nothing about what I was doing, I'll be honest, but I learned. I figured it out. I was like, at that time I had to program this little microcomputer to control a spectrum analyzer and, things that would be quite trivial today that you would do, on your iPhone. But at that time, we didn't do that. So there were things that, for that first project that I had to learn on my own. The other thing that was fabulous about working there was with each tour, you could change offices. So not only I wouldn't always go back with the same group of people working that. When I went back for another tour, I would go into a completely different office doing something completely new that, again, I knew nothing about, but had to learn. So through that, I really got a good view of what NSA does and what kind of jobs I liked, and also more importantly, what I didn't like, because there were some things that I did. One of the tours, I was like, this is fine. I understand it. I get it, but not for me. That's not something I'd want to do. So, when it came time then to graduate from college, I went out. It was a great time for engineers to get a job. It was the booming Reagan years of defense. And, there were jobs, tons of jobs available in the defense industry for engineers. So I went out and interviewed, and I will say that a couple things. One, because I had all of this great experience, I had a lot of job offers, and it probably helped that I was a woman too. So that may have helped too. I was a good student too, by the way. So I had a lot of job offers. And when it was all done though, NSA really was competitive in their job offer. And I decided to do that because I knew I could pick exactly what I would be doing. I could pick the office where I would work, and I knew exactly what I was going to be getting into. So that's kind of how I entered the career field. And that's how I entered the national security business. And, that same type of opportunity is available today, many years later.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Now, as you were progressing at NSA and as you got into this, were there mentors that helped you navigate inside the agency and all the different opportunities that might have been available to you?
Yes, I would say so. In my very early years, I had some of the more mature men in the office. It was always men, by the way, who kind of looked after me. I wouldn't call them mentors, but they really helped me along to really learn the business and learn, how to do the assignments and things that were, that I had to do. So they were there. But as far as mentorship, that was an interesting challenge. So in my case, I had gone to, I had a boss, let's just call him a boss, a guy I worked for, and he had really helped me along over the years. But then at one point he says, you really need a mentor. And he said, and it can't be me. It can't be somebody in your chain of command. You need to have somebody else. And I said, okay, well, I have requirements from my mentor. This is probably the mid-90s at the time. I said, what are your requirements? Well, number one, I want to have a woman. And we were looking for somebody who was a senior executive at that time to be my mentor. I want to be a woman. Okay. He said, okay, got it. I said, I want somebody who is married with children. He said, okay. Didn't even have to be married. I just want somebody who had kids is really what I wanted to have. And I said, and I want somebody who has work-life balance, is as a woman with children as a senior executive. And he just kind of shook his head and said, now you've made it hard. I said, okay, well, see what you can do. He searched for a while. He came back and said, I have somebody. I think she'll work out fine. She has all these requirements. So we met, and I think she was going to be great. And then, I don't know, 6 months later, she retired. So I lost my very short-lived mentor was gone. So then I had to go continue on my own. In the end, what ended up happening was I ended up with a really interesting assignment over a 6-month period that was, and I got to work on a small team. And a gentleman who was running the team at the time was a senior. And so it was, the entertaining part was he was a male. He didn't have children. He was married, but anyway, terrible work-life balance. But anyway, in the end, he became my mentor. And so he's the person who really helped me when I needed, to talk to somebody about, hey, I got to weigh these options. It's time for me to move on. What do you think about this versus that? He also opened doors for me, right? He would open doors as, I want you to meet with somebody. I want you to talk with somebody. And, that door would open. So, and he was there, and I'll be honest. I mean, I retired. He's retired. He's still my mentor today. I still talk to him. We still converse regularly. So that I would say, yeah, a mentor was important. I mean, I did have others along the way who did help shepherd me along. But if you ask me, he is the one who took care of me through my career.
Excellent. So that mentorship process then is very important for our students on the call today to really understand that it is more of that goes into your work life and also your studying life too, is to find someone to bounce ideas off of and help guide you then, right?
So I will say also, in adding to that, it was funny when the first person was trying to help me find the mentor, when we failed, total failure, he said, Laura, I guess what I need you to know is that now you have to be that woman. You've got to be that woman for all of these other young women coming through the ranks, because apparently there's a need for that. Right. And I would say throughout the rest of my career, I served that role. And I had many women, young women with families, who would come and I would meet with them and we'd talk about, what their aspirations were for the future. How do you balance? I've got a baby, I've got a toddler, I've got all these demands, and how can I do that? And, so I would help them through that and help them to understand. I think they felt this pressure to work crazy hours and do all this. And then sometimes you just got to walk away. You just say, sorry, it's done. I'm going home to pick up my kids. And that's the way it has to be. So I really helped them through that, because I think they felt that they weren't doing their part at times if they didn't, abide by what everybody else was doing. So I tried to do that and serve that. And I'll be honest, I still have a couple of them who I still mentor today, even though I've retired.
Well, in light of that point that you just brought up, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a woman starting a career in, let's face it, a male-dominated field there at NSA?
Yeah, it was definitely male-dominated. My first office, there was, I don't know how many people, probably 20, over 20 people in the office, and there was one other woman in me. Was it. And it was a bunch of males, right? It was a bunch of men. And there were some, it was interesting because there were some who were like my peers, my age. They were my friends. We would hang out all the time, right? We'd go out on the weekends and do stuff together. And then the more challenging ones were the ones who were just like, 5 to 10 years older than me and seemed to want to challenge everything that we did, So, I had to work with that. I had to win them over and say, I am capable. I do have skill. I have an education. I can do this. And there was one I remember. Oh, a new person came to the office and he was having difficulty building a circuit or something. And I came over. He says, "Hey, well, let's see what you know. Can you help fix this?" I looked at it, gave him 10 seconds, and said, "Yeah, connect ground to your circuit. It might work." He says, "Oh, I was just testing you to see if you knew what you were doing." I said, "Oh, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" So anyway. There were always a few bad apples. I would say for the most part, I was successful in my career, and I rarely faced obstacles. And I think the biggest one, my biggest disappointment came when I was pregnant with my first child. And there was the person who was the person in charge of my branch, let's say, was leaving. I was his deputy. I should have moved up into that position. No question. I should have moved into that position. I was well prepared. Everybody knew that, all the workforce knew I was well prepared. And they they brought somebody else in and said, well, you're pregnant. You're going to be gone for a while. It's like, whoa, that's not cool. I don't think they could do that today. They wouldn't get away with it today, but it was just really disappointing. And on the other hand, I think what it caused me to do, I hung out for a little while after I came back from maternity leave. I did stick with it, but it also forced me to say, I got to get out of this and I got to go find another job. And I did. And I found a really good job. And so it forced me to get out of my comfort zone. So while I was disappointed and it wasn't fair, I probably took an opportunity I wouldn't have had I not had that happen. So, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. There's always something else that comes about. But, I would say, I saw change over at NSA over the years, and it became a much, much better place for women to rise to the senior ranks.
Well, and that's my follow-on question. Obviously, being at NSA since you've been 19, that's a good span of life experience. So to maybe, share with our folks who are here today, what you've seen, not only at NSA, but I mean, you've worked with people downtown, you've worked with people in other agencies, you've worked with people out in the scientific community in everything you've done in those relationships. So how have you seen women rise within the STEM fields since you've begun your career, and where those women are participating?
Sure. So I'd say, when I first arrived at NSA, first of all, there were always a lot of women who worked at NSA, and that's a lot of them were interestingly in the intelligence analysis field. There's always been quite a few women in those areas. Also, cryptanalysis tends to bring in quite a few women into the field. So that, there were always women that were working there. I mean, we had a large, it wasn't, probably wasn't 50%, but still it wasn't like there were no women around. Just when in my engineering shop, It was always just me. But I think what you saw is that there were no women in the senior ranks. I mean, I'd say that at the time I arrived at NSA, Ann Carroll Christie was the deputy director. So there was a woman who had risen up to the rank of deputy director. But largely, if you looked at the senior executive ranks, it was men. It was a male-dominated senior ranks, and women really had to work hard to make that, to get into those ranks. I saw as I entered the senior ranks that there were many, many, many more women who became senior executives, right? And to the point where it was probably 50% at this point at NSA. And not only that, moving way up into the senior ranks as well. And, you see that across the intelligence community. At the time throughout my career, I did a lot of work with the CIA. And the same was true there. They had many, most of the senior executive ranks were men, but then over the years, they changed as well. And you saw many more rising up through the ranks. So, the opportunities are there. And I think, government recognizes that you got to have that. You have to have that diversity in all areas. And so, so it really did change. The workforce changed so much. And, over the years and it was all for the good. I mean, I would say, right?
Cool. Well, going back to maybe the cyber topic and protecting our national security, et cetera, in today's environment, what do you think students need to do to start preparing for themselves or the different opportunities that might be available in cyber to them?
Sure. So, obviously, a lot of this is STEM career oriented. So, obviously start with taking those STEM courses in high school or starting in middle school up through high school. Take on the harder, more difficult math and science classes. And, if there's AP versions of those classes available, take them, right? But the other thing beyond that, there's so many opportunities to do other things as well. So I just happen to be finishing this up so I can talk about it pretty easily. I serve on the scholarship committee for our local county, Anne Arundel County, Maryland. And so I just reviewed 36 engineering scholarships for high school seniors. And that we provide through this foundation that I support. This is not the foundation. This is not the National Cryptologic Museum Foundation. I'm talking about this other foundation that I'm a trustee for. So I read all of these scholarship applications, astounded some of the work students were doing at the high school level. Many of them had found these opportunities for internships that were, really challenging internships, several through Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, their Aspire program, but through others as well. Or they had gone off to some kind of a summer camp, a 3-week summer camp, a math type of summer camp. So I think to help prepare, that's another opportunity, is to see if there's a place where you can get your foot in the door and just get a little bit of experience behind you. As I said before, not only to learn what you like, but also to learn what you don't like, because I think that's just as important. So you don't head down a path and say, oh, this is not something I want to do. But I think there's just plenty of things that you can do today. And there's clubs too, right? A lot of the kids had done robotics clubs and things like that. And, or there were there were some technology clubs that they were involved in. So do that. The other thing I'm going to point out, if anybody wants a job in national security, absolutely critical to live your clean life. And what I mean by that is really you've got to stay away from, any kind of drugs, any kind of trouble, anything like that, because that will close doors for you if you want to keep all of those doors open. So live a clean life is probably the best way I can do it, because that's really important if you want to do something in national security in the future.
Thank you, Laura. Great point. And attendees, please start thinking about questions to throw in that Q&A. I have a couple of more, but we'd love to hear your questions. And I'm sure Laura is open to anything that that you would like to ask her. So please start putting stuff in the Q&A for her. In light of the last comment, you talked about living that clean life. As you know, one of the things we're doing at the foundation is developing a booklet for not only middle school, but for promoting the high school stuff. And it has a lot to do with social media. And I know as an old person, I think Facebook is the latest thing, but I know that isn't. It's Instagram or whatever those are. And I always constantly tell people I don't tweet, I chirp, So, but if you can maybe talk a little bit about the social media aspects, not only from their perspective, but maybe also from your perspective on how social media has been used from a national security standpoint on disinformation and how we need to really concentrate on that threat to our national security as well.
Yeah. So picking up on the last thing I said about leading the clean life, I would say, watch what you tweet, watch what you put on social media, right? It can come back to haunt you. So just be really cognizant of what you're doing, right? You want to just, don't put yourself out in the bad light. You want to make sure that you present your best you out there. But also, I think, we've seen just so much misinformation that's out there. It's hard to tell what's right and what's wrong, what's truth from not truth. So, I sometimes see things on social media. I go back and fact check it. This doesn't look right. Sure enough, most of the time when I think it doesn't look right, it's probably not right. And somebody's just making something up, right? Or sometimes just omitting key facts, right? It can be mostly right, but you left out the context behind it. So sometimes you got to be really careful about making sure you understand the whole story, not just getting the thread that somebody wants you to see. So, it's really important. We need to be a fact-based society in the future. And you all can help with that, right? We all play a part in this. We all got to learn to be, good fact-loving Americans, or even others who live elsewhere. But we need to really think about that in everything that we put out, or what is put out that is for us to consume. Just, and that from a national security point of view, you think about it, if we have a nation that is kind of with lies underpinning it, that puts us at risk, right? And other nation states or other bad actors will exploit that. They will know our weaknesses and they will take advantage of that. And we got to be really careful about that as a nation. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, definitely. Now, from your engineering background, obviously as an engineer, we're always looking at what the future is going to do to us and where we need to really concentrate on. So from what you're seeing in, the 5G, I just read an article on 6G, which just kind of, I thought we were all concerned with 5G, but there's always that next thing. We have the Internet of Things, everything connected together, etc. So from an engineering standpoint and obviously with the fact of information security on how we need to address those various things, what do you think the future, this cybersecurity field thing is?
Endless without bounds. I mean, I think just there is so many opportunities in many different areas, right? You could look at it from a pure engineering point of view, and you could take on responsibilities and jobs that will, I'm going to be here to ensure that this phone, is as secure as possible and isn't transmitting information. So you could take it from that point of view, but also just if people like data analysis, for instance, people want to, scout, some people, look into data science and things like that. Looking through data and understanding where those weaknesses are as well, and understanding how we could be threatened or look for weaknesses in others as well, depending on what side you're playing on in that. But I think there's just so many different areas that, somebody could go into it. Could be an engineer, you could be a computer scientist, you could be a data scientist, you could study something, the social sciences, and mix that with a little bit of math, right, to get your data science point of view. So I think there's many opportunities to explore, study different topics and still come back and it could be about protecting our assets as a nation. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes. Hey, we got a question in the chat room. What are one or two examples of your most challenging experiences related to the nation's security that you can talk about?
Okay, I know what you want to talk about. I'm just trying to think how you're going to talk about it. I would say the biggest one that I was involved in 2013, there was this character named Edward Snowden who revealed secrets, right? Basically put a lot of information out into the public domain that was classified and damaging, very damaging to the nation. Was he working with the Russians or not working with the Russians? He said he was doing it as a patriot. I have a different opinion. Many of my colleagues have a different opinion about what he was doing, but he put a lot of information out there. So there were multiple things that I think that happened as a result of that. One was we had to understand the problem and how bad it was. That was my job at the time, was to get our arms around what he had taken and stolen and what was going out there and what was the potential for what would be there. And I had to do that over a very, very short amount of time, like in a matter of weeks, which you'd say, well, that shouldn't be so hard. It was hard. And then get a report together for the president and do that. I would say of all the jobs that I had, that was probably the most challenging thing that I did during my entire career, just because of how important it was and how the resources I need to get on a short amount of time and to deliver something and to deliver. And we did, but I was really proud of my work in that. But the other part of it was it really caused us as an agency, as an intelligence community, to take a step back and really think about how we were viewed in the public and what the nation understood and did not understand about what our job was. Because again, it was kind of misinformation out there, right? Putting things out of context out into the public. And then they take away the idea that we're doing things that we're really not. But how do you explain that? So really having to think hard about what it means to be in the intelligence community and what your job is and how you portray that to the nation. And so that people understand you're really there to protect Americans, not to exploit Americans. And so I would say that was probably the most challenging of all of the things that I had to work on during the time.
So do you think, let me pull the string on that if you don't mind, with helping the public understand what the agency does in helping to protect national security. From that Snowden time forward, do you think there have been improvements in the ability to share that information and also to bring the public more aware of the value of what the agency does to protect the U.S.?
So I think it's better. I think there's a little better understanding, but is it where it needs to be? Absolutely not. I still think that many of the intelligence agencies are reticent to talk about what they do. Obviously, it's classified, but there are some aspects you can talk about. It's just culturally, it's so uncomfortable for us. However, as you know, I mean, that's one of the things that we are working with. Our foundation is working with NSA, is to build this platform where we can have that dialogue and we can convene groups to discuss this, right? To discuss, whether it's privacy, whether it's, how we protect our networks. You can name any topic that we can bring people together to have that discussion. So, I think NSA is really pushing on this public trust and confidence initiative so that they are more well understood in the public. So, long way to go. It's better than it was, but still, we have a lot of work to do.
Cool.
And we're gonna help with that.
So, looking at the folks we have on the chat today, if we had to give them, I know we talked about taking STEM classes and those types of opportunities, but are there other sources of for them to learn about cyber and to explore those? I mean, there's lots of things like competitions you can get into,
right.
et cetera. So what other opportunities would you like to share that they may want to explore?
So I think some of these cyber competitions, if they're really interested, they would, they operate, whether it's Cyber Patriot or others are there. Another place that NSA runs this Gen Cyber Camp, right? That's something that you should look for. And they run them all over the nation in the summer. So a Gen Cyber Camp is a great way to kind of get your, to dip your toes in the water to see if it's something that you would like. Of course, there's a lot of resources available online, right? You can look at, various websites, and Mark could probably share a ton of those with you. But I think the best thing to do would be find a hands-on opportunity, right? Whether it's, a one night, some kind of, that like the museum offers, our museum, the National Cryptologic Museum offers opportunities for a STEAM night or something where maybe there's some hands-on experience. But in your local area, you might find something where, whether it's a weekend opportunity or evening opportunity, but the competitions are also across the nation. I don't know if you have any others you would want to add to that, right?
Well, I just dropped in the chat window for all the folks and the attendees that the cyberseek.org site.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with that in my head, but yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that is run by NIST, by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, out of the National Initiative of Cybersecurity Education, or NICE. We love our acronyms, don't we?
We love those.
Yes. But anyway, the NICE folks run this CyberSeek, and it shows where all those jobs are available by state. I know we've got a lot of folks from Colorado on the line today, and in Colorado, they're over. Let me look at Colorado here. Colorado has 19,000 job openings in cybersecurity right now. So for our folks in Colorado, just to let you know that there's plenty of work there in Colorado so you can keep skiing. But it also talks about the career paths and kind of some of the things you need to know. So those are some great opportunities for students to research. And I would really ask that they put that as a normal hit for their websites, et cetera. So is there I got another question here. Talks about, you spoke about the co-op opportunities, et cetera. Can you also address maybe some of the other apprenticeship programs, internship programs, not only at the National Security Agency, but other opportunities in that environment that students may want to pursue?
So first of all, I will say for NSA, they offer so many intern opportunities, especially college level intern opportunities, aside from the co-op program. You name your program, there's an internship for it, whether you want to do intelligence analysis or you want to study math, right? They have a math intern program. you want to study, they have several cyber programs, several cybersecurity, either cybersecurity or other types of cyber programs that they offer. And it's on the NSA.gov website. They do also offer some things for high school. One of the things they do for high school, and they get to be very local here, is there's a high school work study program that brings students in as their senior year in high school to work. But in the case other internships, I would say, so some of these are offered through universities. You can look at local universities and see if there's some for high school students, if they offer some kind of internship. Check with any of your technical companies. A lot of those, whether it's a big government contractor or somebody else, just look on their websites and see if they offer some type of internship. A lot of them are competitive. So a lot of these things, they'll have multiple applicants and they'll have, 100 applicants and they, maybe have 10 spots or something. You have to apply, but that's okay. I mean, apply for many, right? Apply for many and perhaps one will pan out. As I said, like the one that I see a lot of people doing here is the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. They do that. So if you look at any of the other platforms such as that would have similar types of internships that could be for high school students. So I think are there any specific ones you would point out, Mark, that you know of?
Well, I really appreciate you pointing out. In fact, one of our participants also highlighted the NSA high school work study program. I think you're right on the money. Every single federal agency has internships, and there's, so you just go to Department of State, Department of Justice, and within Justice, you have FBI.
CIA offers them. They offer a lot of internships at CIA.
And some of them are not paid. I mean, my daughter took an unpaid summer internship with Department of State on international affairs. And it was a great experience. And she got to meet and talk and converse with Colin Powell. So, I mean, that was worth the ticket of admission, I would say, into that program. And Colin Powell took a special interest on the internship program and made sure that they had access to him to speak about the international aspects of the challenges. And she had meaty work to do. It wasn't just go file this. She actually participated in international policy analysis and decisions, not the decisions, but, developing those decisions and seeing how those decisions are vetted within the community. So I agree with you. You just have to go out there and seek them, because they are there. And many times a lot of these internships go vacant because they just don't have
your high school counselors should know in your local area what internships are available. So exactly. And high school counselors should be able to point you down that path. Or if you have STEM teachers, for instance, I know a lot of all these scholarships I read in the Project Lead the Way program. I know that a lot of the kids were getting some advice and some counsel from their teachers as well. I can see that through the essays and things that were written, and letters of recommendation.
Well, Laura, as we wrap up today, we got just a few more minutes of our time. I'd like to turn back to the Women's History Month theme. And is there anything you'd like to, with the women on the call and guys, you can probably listen to this advice as well. But Laura, is there anything you'd like to share with the women on the call?
Yeah. So I think the one thing I would say for women entering the field, I think the biggest thing that I've heard, and I hear this from the people I've mentored, is you have to find your voice. And that seems to be a more difficult thing for women. And I've had, I think people have studied this, right? It's really hard to find your voice. You're in a meeting. It's dominated, right? There's a lot of men in the room. And you kind of sometimes have to stand up and say, no, I need to be heard. And that's uncomfortable. So, and I've told many people this, I said, stop the conversation. If somebody says, okay, we've finished this, let's move on. If you have not had your voice, you say, no, stop. I have something to say. So my advice would be, be brave, be bold, have courage, and find your voice. Speak up, because you have something to say, and it will probably be very valuable. So that would be my final piece of advice.
Laura, that is a phenomenal piece of advice, and especially when we're talking about national security. Everybody has to speak up. And Everybody has valued opinions. And so I really appreciate that type of advice for the girls and the women on our call today, because it is very important. I've been in those rooms where the guys sometimes steamroll. And there have been times where I've said, no, wait a minute, I haven't heard from this person, and actually called that person out to give their opinion. And in fact, it was a dominant opinion that then held the day. So I really appreciate that particular advice to our folks. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for stepping in for Barbara, and we look forward to getting Barbara on a future talk. But what great advice you provided these students, and the importance of national security and the importance of cyber in that we have plenty of opportunities. And if people will just go to the website that's above my head, cryptologicfoundation.org, you'll find a lot more information on what we're doing within schools and education. So with that, I thank everybody for attending this cybersecurity chat, and please go to cryptologic.foundation.org to see our next chats. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.